we're going to learn one last little bit about completing the square. There's a small catch to what we learned in the last video. In the last video, I said your first job was to isolate x squared plus bx. Notice how I did not say ax squared plus bx, because if there's an a, it kind of messes things up. It's an easy fix though. All we have to do, if there is an a that we don't want to be there, is just divide everything by a. It's an equation. We're allowed to divide both sides. Divide both sides by a. Don't be afraid if that leaves you with fractions. There's nothing wrong with that. So x squared minus 5 halves x. It's going to be plus 1/2. I'll write it plus 1/2 equals 0. But remember, we want to get that x squared plus bx alone. So I will move that negative 1/2 over. Notice how when I do this, I leave this empty space here. Because I know what's about to happen, I'm going to add something to both sides. We're going to take the b over 2 and square it, which in this case is negative 5 halves over 2 squared, which looks weirder than it really is. Negative 5 halves over 2 is the same thing as negative 5 over 2 times 2. If you take 5 halves and cut, think about it this way, if you take 1/2 and cut it in half, you've got a quarter. So if you take 5 halves and cut them in half, you'll have 5 quarters, which you can square by just squaring the numerator and squaring the denominator separately. So that's what I'm going to add to both sides, 25/16. On the right-hand side, we have to add those fractions. And there's no way around this. You just need to make a common denominator. Hopefully you can see it just by looking, hey, I need that 2 to be a 16, so I'm going to multiply by 8 over 8. So that we'll be able to add the common denominator, add the numerators over the common denominators, and that's 17 over 16. Fantastic. On the left-hand side, you might be looking at that and saying, wait, I know we're supposed to factor, but how am I supposed to factor with all those crazy fractions? I need numbers that multiply to 25/16 and add to negative 5 halves? Yeah, you do, but the good news is we already know what it's going to be. The whole point is we're making a perfect square. So it will absolutely be just x minus 5/4 squared. So you shouldn't have to think too hard about those factors because we've already done the work to make the perfect square. And so then our next little bit here would be to take the square root of both sides like always. Of course, remembering the plus or minus. And when you have the plus or minus of a fraction, you can't really take the square root of 17. It's irrational. We'll just leave it like that. But you can take the square root of 16. And it's not a coincidence that these are both 4s. They should always be the same thing. Because remember, this 16 that originally we put in there to make the common, and then had to make the common denominator, that 16 came from taking the 4 and squaring it. So it makes sense that it's going to work out now also. And so that means it's not going to be that hard to add the 5/4 to both sides. 5/4 plus or minus root 17 over 4. And to be honest, you can leave it like that, or you can, because the denominators are both 4, you can put them together. And those are your two solutions.